Hello and welcome to this Developer Diary recap series for Imperator Rome. Now around about each month I cover the latest developer diaries and post a video. This video will be the 5th video in the series. Now because I fell a little bit behind over the holiday break, I'll be covering up to Diaries number 28 in this video, and then catching up on the rest in a few weeks. Now if you haven't checked out the others, please check the video cards, the description and the playlist that links to the others. Also, if you like this series and you want to support the channel and see more from Imperator Rome as it gets closer to release, do please consider supporting on Patreon. I know people kind of roll their eyes when they hear the word Patreon from a YouTuber, but I'm still a small channel operating full time and I'd like to spend more time doing what people want rather than what gets the most views on YouTube, and they're not always the same thing. Anyways, let's get on with the video. Diary number 23, Greek military traditions. Now to catch people up, military traditions are sort of like a unique military technology tree. What traditions you have are tied to your culture group, and there are 7 in the game in total. Each tree has 3 paths that you can go down, and when you complete a path, you get a bonus tradition. So we're told it also won't really be possible to get all the traditions in one playthrough, so it's probably best to pick a path that suits your situation and then just commit to it. Now as mentioned, Greek military traditions are used by everyone that is part of the Greek culture group. This means that all of the successor kingdoms such as the Seleucids, Egypt, Phrygia, as well as the Greek city-states themselves. So a lot of the map is dominated with this Greek culture, not just Greece itself. Now the Greek military tradition tree grants the Phalanx ability at the beginning. Phalanx, as described in Diary number 11, is a toggle ability on an army. When true, it gives slower movement for armies on the map, but heavy infantry get a big defense bonus. The traditions then split into the Seleucid path, the Greek path, and the Antigonid path. Each of these paths just offer different buffs that I think I'll eventually go into in more detail closer to the game's release, but for now, the important ones are at the level 4 traditions, where you get some sort of new mechanic available. The Seleucid path allows for Cavalry Skirmish, which is another toggle ability for armies that increases damage dealt by light cavalry and camelry, while also increasing the damage they take themselves. Fun fact is that this is also available for the North African traditions down the tribal path, so for a faction like Carthage for instance. The Greek path allows you to establish military colonies, which are border forts, which essentially means new colonized territory starts with a fort on it. The Antigonid path allows for Raid City. Your army can raid an enemy city, which gives you instant money and manpower, but hurts the city for growth, output, and commerce for 5 years. Now another fun fact is that these 2 abilities are granted in the Italic tradition tree also, so we're starting to see a little bit of a crossover of cultures for some of their more unique abilities. That's pretty much it for the traditions. This diary is also accompanied by a detailed breakdown of the starting conditions of the Greek mainland. We're starting to get a lot of these now with each diary for different parts of the map, and we could easily spend 20 minutes just talking about a few of the factions mentioned. So I'm going to instead maybe do a separate video going through the most prominent factions we've seen so far and their starting scenario, if people think that would be an interesting video. Now these recaps are meant to focus more on the mechanics of things, so we'll leave it for another time, but I do recommend checking it out for yourself in the diary if you are interested in the starting conditions of these factions. Diary number 24, Religions and Omens. In Imperator Rome, each country, character, and pop will belong to one of the 22 religions in the game. Religion plays small effects on your characters and pops that could be difficult to manage when scaled up. For instance, pops that belong to a different religion to that of your country won't be as productive or happy. Characters that belong to a different religion will have lower maximum loyalty. Pops ruled by a governor with a different religion to them will be less happy and more prone to unrest. Countries with different religions are less likely to accept proposals, and characters with different religions are less likely to be elected office if they're in a republic. So it seems it can get really, really granular. You could be Arabic, have Arabic pops, but a Jewish governor in your lands will cause all the pops to be less happy with under his rule. That governor wouldn't be as loyal either. Now to fix this, you could use the religious conversion governor policy, which we saw in Diary number 20. This adds some unrest and has a chance at converting a pop every month depending on the governor's zeal. The other way is spending religious power to directly convert pops. Characters will change religion based on their ambition and through events, and you can also force them to change it, though they will take a pretty big loyalty hit by doing that. Now you can also spend this religious power to invoke omens, to sacrifice to the gods, which increases your stability, and to invoke devotio, which reduces war exhaustion. It costs around 200 religious power to invoke an omen, and unlike Europa Universalis Rome, omens can never fail. That's pretty much it for religion. There's no word on whether different religions have different omens, just that they're named differently, and I'm not sure if a state can change its religion yet either. So basically, it's sort of global buffs for your country and also sort of a second culture for your pops. For those interested in reading the diary yourself, this one went pretty in-depth into the region of Anatolia, but as I mentioned, I'll save that for a different video. Diary number 25, National Ideas. National Ideas make a return from Europa Universalis Rome. They're essentially quite large buffs that you allocate at the government level that kind of determine your kind of playstyle with your government for a while. And they cost 50 civic power to change once they're in place. There's 36 national ideas split across the 4 power resources, so military, civic, oratory, and religious ideas. Now, some of these ideas are unlocked through technological advances later on in your campaign, so you won't have access to all 36 right away. And your government type will come with preferences for these idea slots. An example used was Carthage, which are an oligarchic republic at the beginning of the game. They have 2 civic slots and 1 oratory slot, whereas Rome, an aristocratic republic, has 2 military slots and 1 oratory slot. Now, you don't have to pick ideas that fit that preferred type, but if you do, and you pick ideas that fit those slots, you get a further government bonus of some sort that wasn't really detailed. Now, we haven't seen how it plays out just yet, but you can also change your government type throughout your campaign, so you could shift from kind of having bonuses with economic ideas to having bonuses with military ideas if you were to try and become more aggressive later on, or if you had already expanded and you wanted to actually just, kind of go for a trade empire almost. As mentioned, there are 36 of the ideas and they are all listed currently in the dev diary, though their numbers are all subject to change, so I kind of feel like it's not too worth it going through them just yet. They're all just pretty standard buffs, but like I said, they can be quite large as they are kind of these overarching government buffs, and there's no negatives associated with any of them. This diary then goes on to detail the West African starting countries, which, as I mentioned, you could go into a lot of detail with each of these as well, and I'll cover all of these interesting start positions in a separate video if people want. Diary number 26, Economic Policies and Power Conversion. The main source of income in Imperator Rome is taxes, which is generated by slaves, and commerce, which is generated by trade and then further enhanced by citizens. The main expenditure is the maintenance of your armies, your navies, and forts, as well as a new type of expense called wages. Now, wages are pretty interesting. Essentially, every job or office in your country has a defined wage. It's always a percentage of your income, which increases depending on the level of office. So a ruler, for instance, can take up to 5% of your income, and corruption can then modify that further. This means that as you grow and expand, your top officials will accrue more wealth and cost you more to keep in office, relative to your income. You can broadly modify your economy through economic policies. These are essentially just low, medium, and high toggles for certain categories of income and expenditure. For instance, you could toggle fort maintenance policies to low, which reduces the upkeep cost by 50%, but also reduces the size and defense by around 90%. So that's kind of how you take your forts offline in times of peace. Now, in times of war, you could toggle it to the medium level, granting no buffs or debuffs, or you could go up to high, which is improved fortifications, increasing the garrison size and defense, but also drastically increasing the upkeep. This kind of thing can be done for armies and fleets with similar effects. You can also toggle how you want your wages to go out, and it'll affect character loyalty. Now, for the most part, it seems that the low end gives pretty bad debuffs, and the high end gives very marginal increases to things, so it's not a one-to-one correlation. People who are paid less tend to be way more unloyal than people who are paid more. They only tend to be slightly more loyal. Now, on the income side, you can do the same. Reduce the amount of tax that you take in, but reduce unrest at the same time. And an interesting one is taking less money from subject nations in tributes. It actually improves their opinion, so you could maybe do that when you're trying to strike deals or you're worried about them maybe declaring independence. Now, if you run a deficit in your economy, then each month there's around a 6% chance that an event will occur that will either help or hinder you further. But either way, they're going to come with a high price to be paid in some form that wasn't really outlined. Now, power conversion was also briefly touched on. Almost every action in the game you may have noticed costs some sort of power resource. Oratory power, civic power, martial, whatever. And if you're running low for a harsh exchange rate, you can convert power into gold, or gold into power. Though it is supposed to be a kind of a last resort kind of thing. It's not supposed to be efficient. And that's it for the economy. This diary went into detail then further on Egypt's starting scenario and surrounding regions, which, as I mentioned, I'll cover in its own video in future if people want. Diary number 27, Pop Movement and Colonization. Pops can move between cities in the form of events such as migrations, natural disasters, and things like that. Now you can forcibly move pops into any adjacent city. Now remember, cities are the names of regions. Or one C-zone across to any other city within a province for 20 civic power. This means it's a little harder to get pops to move across different provinces, as they have to move from border to border with you paying civic power each time if you were trying to relocate them vast distances. Now, why would you ever do that? Well, as mentioned, we could have a province dedicated to converting pops to your religion, and you might want to move as many foreign religious pops to that province as possible, and you might want to spread around pops of different cultures to reduce the unrest, or you just might want to stimulate growth or trade elsewhere. The rest of the diary focuses on colonization. Colonization is typically done by having a city being adjacent to an unclaimed or empty city. These areas are most typically found in northwestern Europe, the eastern section of the map, sections of Africa, and Ireland as well. These cities are not under control of any country, but do have pops living in them. To colonize them, you need a city with 10 pops adjacent to an empty city. Colonizing it then sends one of those pops over to claim it for your country. The culture and religion will still stay the same for any pre-existing living pops there. Now, unlike EU Rome, civilization value doesn't impact colonization. Instead, civilization value affects the happiness of pops living in a particular city. A city has a civilization value and your country has a national civilization value. All cities will kind of gravitate towards your national civilization value. The higher, the happier your free men and the citizen pops will be, but the more unhappy your tribesmen pops will be, and vice versa if it's lower. Civilization value is a representation of the infrastructure and urbanization of a city. So when you freshly colonize some tribal lands, it's quite low and takes some time to come up to the national level. There's usually a lot of tribesmen in these lands, so at first they'll be happy enough, but slowly get more and more agitated as your colony grows and becomes more civilized. You can then get governor policies that help with the conversion of tribesmen or move them around as we discussed earlier. You can also colonize lands through military colonies, which we've seen a little bit of, or migrations that we have to kind of wait to see more of in future. Okay, so that's it for all the diaries so far. As mentioned at the top, there's been a few more diaries that I need to get to, but they're topics that are so drastically different from what we discussed today, mostly around combat, that I thought I'd just push it out to the next recap video, and it gives me a bit more time to get content out if it's in smaller pieces like this. Hopefully that's alright. If you want to see more, please consider giving the video a like, a share with people you might think may be interested, and also let me know your thoughts on the direction of the game. It's really interesting reading comments every month or so when I do these videos about what people like and what people don't like from this series. Some people want more CK2, more character stuff, some people want more Empire stuff like in EU4, and some people want it to be more like Total War and just be a little bit more accessible. Oh, and also there's been an event for Imperator Rome where a bunch of YouTubers got to play the game and do videos on it. Unfortunately, my channel is just a little bit too small for that, it seems, so I didn't get invited, but I recommend checking out Lionheart and Spiffing Brits videos. Those are my favorites of the bunch. Anyways, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.